The world prefers a free man, not out of admiration, but because he is easy to use. If you are constantly accessible, you will be consumed. If you are endlessly available, you will be overlooked. When you give your time, loyalty, and energy without attaching value to them, do not act surprised when you are treated like a clearance item on the discount rack. There is a ruthless economic principle governing human relationships, and it does not care about your kindness. It is the law of supply and demand. When the supply of you is excessive, when you are always present, always responding, always assisting, always agreeing, the demand for you collapses. You become like oxygen, necessary, perhaps, but free, and no one pays for air until they are suffocating. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He warned that a ruler who is overly generous, overly transparent, overly familiar eventually loses respect. He appears weak, he appears ordinary, and ordinary things are disposable. You have spent years trying to be liked. You were conditioned to believe that giving more guarantees receiving more. It does not. That belief is a comfortable illusion, a morality designed for workers, not a strategy reserved for power. The harsher truth is this: people value what costs them. They value what they might lose. They value what is scarce. If you want your authority back, you must stop being free. You must become a premium good in a marketplace flooded with cheap options. But how do you assign value to yourself? How do you create scarcity when you have responsibilities, bills, expectations? That is the shift we are about to make. We are going to dissect the psychology of value. We are going to apply the mechanics of luxury economics to your identity. By the end, you will understand why difficulty is not a flaw but a filter, and why becoming expensive is the only way to become truly independent. But first, you must accept something uncomfortable. You are currently on sale, and it is time to close the store. Consider the paradox of value: why water is nearly free, while diamonds command fortunes. Adam Smith confronted this question centuries ago. He asked why water, essential for life, costs almost nothing, while diamonds, largely unnecessary, cost so much. The answer is scarcity. Water is abundant. It falls from the sky. It flows through rivers because it is everywhere. It is taken for granted. You wash with it. You discard it. You waste it without thought. Diamonds are rare. They are difficult to locate. They demand labor, pressure, extraction, because they are scarce. They are revered. People compete for them. People sacrifice for them. They are treasured not because they are necessary, but because they are rare. Look at your own life. Are you water, or are you a diamond, the agreeable man, the constant yes-sayer, the dependable friend? He is water. He keeps the emotional ecosystem of others alive. They rely on him to absorb their frustrations. They rely on him to carry the weight. They rely on him to reinforce their self-image. Yet, because he flows without restriction, he is drained without hesitation. Plans with him are canceled at the last moment because they know he will not protest. He is paid less because they know he will not negotiate. They unload their emotional waste onto him because he has no boundaries. He believes he is virtuous. In truth, he has saturated the market with himself. He has created an oversupply of his own presence. To increase your value, you must become rare. You must become the diamond. That means becoming inaccessible to those who cannot meet your standard. It is not a gentle transition. It is a sharp pivot. You must eliminate the part of you that craves instant approval. You must tolerate being described as distant. You must accept being called arrogant. Thorstein Veblen observed that status is often signaled not by what people acquire, but by what they can afford to waste. When you become expensive, you demonstrate that you can afford to waste approval. You do not rely on validation to function. That independence communicates status. Begin immediately. Audit your accessibility. How fast do you respond to messages? How often do you agree to things you dislike? How much time do you dedicate to people who rarely reciprocate interest? Every immediate reply is a coupon. Every sure, no problem is a discount code. Stop distributing them. Create scarcity. Allow absence. When supply contracts, perceived value expands. When water disappears, people do not shrug. They worry. They search for the cause. They are suddenly willing to pay a premium to restore access. Become the drought. Consider the psychology of exclusivity. Walk past an elite nightclub. Walk past a luxury house like Hermes. You will see a line. Security. Restricted entry. Now walk past Walmart. The doors open automatically. The lighting is bright. Everyone is welcome. Which establishment commands respect? Which one makes you adjust your appearance before entering? We assign higher value to what resists us. This reflects the principle of effort justification. When we must work for something, the mind concludes it must be worthwhile. When access is effortless, the mind assumes it is cheap. You have been living with automatic doors. Anyone can enter your schedule. Anyone can occupy your mental space. You have eliminated friction from your life. Install a velvet rope. Friction means being just difficult enough to filter out those who lack substance, yet attractive enough that those with ambition will step forward. Most people operate with yes, unless I have a reason to decline. Reverse it. Your new baseline becomes no unless there is a compelling reason to accept. Your default setting must become no, unless there is a compelling reason to say yes. When someone asks for your time, your effort, or your presence, do not rush to comply. Let there be space. Let there be consideration. Silence first, then a measured maybe. And only if it aligns with your direction does it become a yes. This is not arrogance. It is calibration. It communicates that your schedule is not empty, that your life is not waiting to be filled by whoever knocks. It signals that you operate with intention, not impulse. Then comes qualification. Do not grant access simply because someone shows interest. Observe patterns. Notice how they speak about others. Notice how they handle small commitments. Loyalty reveals itself in trivial moments long before it is tested in critical ones. If someone gossips freely, they will eventually gossip about you. If someone disrespects boundaries casually, they will eventually disrespect yours. Keep the rope in place. If a client approaches you, do not immediately accept the transaction. Introduce structure. Require forms. Require waiting. Require clarity. Yes, you may lose certain opportunities. You will lose the impatient. You will lose the entitled. But you will retain those who understand that value is protected, not handed out. This restraint aligns with the philosophy of Niccolo Machiavelli, who advised rulers to move deliberately and believe cautiously. Speed signals eagerness. Eagerness signals need. Slowness suggests strength. When people wait, anticipation builds. The uncertainty of acceptance heightens perceived worth. Immediate approval creates no emotional spike. Delayed access creates investment. You are not excluding to punish. You are filtering to protect. Now consider silence as currency. Information, like money, loses power when oversupplied. The more you speak, the cheaper your words become. Many people narrate their entire existence to anyone who listens. They reveal strategies to colleagues, frustrations to acquaintances, ambitions to strangers online. In doing so, they eliminate leverage. They eliminate mystery. To maintain value, become selective with disclosure. Niccolo Machiavelli observed that most people see appearance, but few perceive essence. Preserve that separation. Let conversation follow an asymmetrical ratio. Listen more than you reveal. When you speak, speak with brevity. If you say you are relocating, let that be sufficient. Avoid excessive explanation. Justification often communicates hierarchy. Authority states, insecurity elaborates. When details are withheld, imagination fills the gaps. People project complexity onto what they cannot fully access. Mystery sustains attention. Oversharing dissolves it. Silence, strategically applied, creates gravity, and gravity draws others inward without effort. Why? Where are you going? Is it for work? It is time for a change. End of sentence. No elaboration, no defensive tone, no performance of reassurance. just a calm statement that stands on its own. The impulse to explain is often an impulse to seek permission. But permission lowers status. The one in authority states direction. The one beneath justifies movement. When you resist the urge to over-explain, you create space. In that space, people begin constructing their own interpretations. They assume strategy. They assume depth. They assume long-term planning. You become a question mark. And the human mind is magnetized by unresolved questions. The most magnetic figures throughout history carried an element of distance. They felt accessible enough to observe, yet unreachable enough to remain intriguing. That slight separation is the price tag. It communicates, without saying it directly, that access is limited. The display is visible. The inventory is protected. When you stop narrating every emotion, every setback, every upcoming move, you introduce scarcity into your identity. Silence forms a vacuum, and people lean toward vacuums. They begin to value your input because it is not constant. When someone rarely speaks but consistently delivers clarity, attention follows automatically. Noise is ignored. Scarcity is respected. Now consider something even more valuable than your words, your reactions. Time can be managed. Access can be restricted. Speech can be rationed. But emotional control is the ultimate currency. Reactive individuals are predictable. Press a button, and they respond instantly. Insult them, and they flare. Praise them, and they inflate. Their state is externally controlled. They function like machines that convert stimulus into output. There is no sovereignty in that. To become truly expensive is to become internally governed. The Stoics describe this as apatheia, not indifference, but mastery over disturbance. It is the ability to witness provocation without surrendering composure. This is costly because it requires discipline over biology. When someone challenges you, your nervous system demands retaliation. To override that impulse requires strength most people never cultivate. It demands awareness, restraint, and deliberate response instead of reflex. In any confrontation, the person who remains centered shifts the balance of power. The provocateur seeks emotional payment. Deny the payment, and the exchange collapses. The insult hangs in the air with nowhere to land. The aggressor is left holding their own hostility. In negotiation, the one who appears least pressured dictates the pace. The one who breathes slowly, who listens without urgency, who can walk away without visible strain, that individual becomes the prize. As Niccolò Machiavelli warned, a ruler who loses his temper diminishes his authority. Anger reveals that someone else has penetrated your inner stability. Composure, by contrast, communicates unshakable ground. When you guard your reactions as carefully as you guard your time, you stop being predictable. And unpredictability, paired with calm, commands respect without demanding it. The moment you explode in anger or collapse into visible frustration, you are admitting that someone else has accessed the control panel of your inner world. Do not grant that access lightly. Treat your emotions like gold stored in a vault. They are not public currency to be distributed to every passerby. When someone attempts to provoke you, shift your posture from reaction to observation. Study the behavior instead of absorbing it. Notice the tone, the intent, the insecurity beneath the surface. Interesting. Then disengage. No spectacle, no lecture, no visible wound. This kind of detachment unsettles manipulative personalities because their leverage depends on extracting emotional payment. They expect outrage, defensiveness, pleading, or explanation. When none is delivered, the transaction collapses. The debt they hope to collect no longer exists. You become unavailable to their drama. And when people cannot predict your emotional output, they tread carefully, not out of fear of abuse, but because they recognize they cannot easily read you. They must invest attention to understand you. They must analyze instead of assume. And investment creates attachment. The more effort someone spends decoding you, the more value they assign to you. The psychology is simple. People protect what they have invested in. Now move to something even more powerful, the absence of necessity. True luxury does not beg to be purchased. A brand like Ferrari does not chase customers with desperation. It does not plead for attention. If one buyer walks away, another appears. If none appear, the product remains untouched and undiminished. That indifference to outcomes sustains prestige. Neediness erodes leverage. In negotiation theory, as emphasized by Chris Voss in Never Split the Difference, desperation is detectable the instant the other party senses that you must secure the agreement. Your bargaining position weakens. The price drops. Concessions multiply. Control shifts. To become truly valuable, you must cultivate the genuine ability to walk away, not theatrically, not as a bluff, but as a lived reality. Build income streams that do not hinge on a single authority. Develop skills that are scarce and transferable. Strengthen friendships so that no single relationship defines your emotional stability. As Niccolò Machiavelli advised, power rooted in one external pillar is fragile. Power rooted in self-sufficiency endures when you know not hope, but know that you can leave any room and remain intact. Your tone changes. Your posture changes. You negotiate from standards rather than from fear. These are my terms. No hostility. No apology. Simply clarity. The willingness to lose the deal often becomes the reason you win it. The person who can endure solitude is never trapped by poor company. The person who can survive unemployment negotiates differently. Independence is not coldness. It is structural strength. And structural strength is what transforms a person from common commodity into rare asset. The free man accepts less because he fears loss. He tolerates a low salary because unemployment terrifies him. He stays in situations that diminish him because uncertainty feels worse than compromise. The expensive man operates differently. He understands that certain skills, when rare and refined, function like a Veblen good value increases with perceived exclusivity. This concept, associated with Thorstein Veblen, explains why some things become more desirable precisely because they are costly. When you are willing to end a negotiation rather than discount yourself, you alter the dynamic. The readiness to walk away is not recklessness. It is proof of self-sufficiency. It signals, without theatrics, I am choosing, not begging. And paradoxically, once you stop chasing validation or approval, others begin pursuing you. Desire gravitates toward what appears indifferent. Consider the metaphor carefully. The dog that leaps for attention is predictable. The cat that observes from a distance commands curiosity. It does not perform for approval. It evaluates before engaging. That posture communicates internal abundance. You do not lunge at every opportunity. You assess. You decide. And sometimes you decline. That selective engagement creates gravity. Yet understand this, these are external strategies. Silence. Distance. Boundaries. Withdrawal, they are tools. Tools fail when the structure beneath them is weak. You cannot permanently simulate value. If your self-concept is fragile, eventually pressure will expose it. The performance collapses. To truly shift position, you must reconfigure your internal economy. You must stop measuring yourself by fairness. Many people are trapped by the expectation that effort guarantees reward. That belief creates resentment when reality contradicts it. But the world does not operate on moral symmetry. It operates on leverage. Perception. Scarcity. As Niccolò Machiavelli observed in political life, power responds to strength and positioning, not to virtue alone. Accepting this does not require cynicism. It requires clarity. Now consider absence as a strategic force. Power is rhythmic, not constant. Constant presence becomes background noise. Strategic withdrawal creates contrast. In the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene articulates the principle that absence can increase respect and perceived value. When you are always available, familiarity erodes mystique. When you step back after establishing worth, imagination replaces scrutiny. Presence exposes flaws. Absence amplifies legend. When you are not in the room, people speculate. They assign meaning to your silence. They wonder what occupies your attention. Curiosity becomes admiration. Scarcity intensifies perceived importance. Reducing supply elevates demand. This stage requires emotional discipline. Withdrawal can trigger insecurity. What if they forget? What if they replace me? Let that possibility exist. If your value depended solely on constant proximity, it was never stable. If it is real, it endures space. And if it does not endure, the illusion dissolves, which is clarity, not loss. If they replace you easily, then you were never rare. You were convenient. Better to discover that truth early than to live under the illusion of irreplaceability. But more often than not, when you withdraw strategically, people lean forward rather than drift away. Think of the artist who vanishes for a year to craft an album. No interviews, no constant updates, no digital noise. When the work finally arrives, attention intensifies because anticipation has been building in silence. Absence amplifies impact. The same principle applies to the quiet professional who avoids gossip, declines unnecessary overtime, and leaves on schedule. When that person finally speaks in a meeting, the room pays attention. Their voice carries weight because it is not diluted by constant presence. Use this principle deliberately. If you have been overavailable, recalibrate, not with resentment, not with theatrics, but with intention. Invest in your own projects. Protect your time. Let messages breathe before responding. Claim your weekends without apology. This is not manipulation. It is rebalancing. You are adjusting the exchange rate of your attention. Presence becomes earned rather than assumed. A star permanently visible fades into the background. A comet that appears rarely becomes unforgettable. Now consider standards. Many people compromise because they fear loss. They split differences in salary, loyalty, respect. They accept partial fulfillment and call it success. But value is reinforced through intolerance of mediocrity. The moment you negotiate against your own principles, you broadcast need. High standards are uncomfortable, yet they attract admiration. Consider Steve Jobs. He was known for demanding precision, even in details most would overlook. His rigidity was criticized, yet it established an expectation of excellence. Standards create identity. When you define non-negotiables, how you are treated, how you work, what you accept, you create structure. Those lines will be tested. They are always tested. People push boundaries to measure strength. If the line moves, respect erodes. If it holds, perception shifts. The willingness to lose an opportunity rather than dilute your standard often results in better opportunities. The paradox is consistent detachment strengthens leverage. This extends inward. External prestige collapses if internal discipline is absent. You cannot demand quality from others while tolerating mediocrity in your own habits. If you neglect sleep, consume low-grade information, avoid physical maintenance, and speak carelessly, you send a signal to yourself that you are disposable. The principle of conspicuous value, associated with Thorstein Veblen, is not merely about visible luxury. It is about what you consistently choose to invest in. High-performance inputs create high-performance identity. The way you treat yourself becomes the template others follow. If you handle yourself with precision, others respond accordingly. If you undermine yourself casually, that tone spreads outward. Value is not declared. It is demonstrated through repetition, through refusal to compromise where it matters, and through the discipline to align private behavior with public expectation. When you neglect your standards, you send a message inward before anyone else hears it. You tell your own mind that you are negotiable, replaceable, average. Your habits become evidence. Upgrade them deliberately. Read material that challenges your thinking instead of numbing it. Train your body with resistance instead of comfort. Dress with intention. Speak clearly and without filler. Maintain posture, tone, and timing. Treat yourself as an instrument that requires precision maintenance. When you move through the world with quiet discipline, people recalibrate how they approach you. The tone you set internally becomes the tone reflected externally. You also teach others how to engage with you by the way you describe yourself. Casual self-insults feel harmless, but repetition creates identity. If you consistently label yourself as disorganized, unlucky, or chaotic. You normalize that frame. You would not deface something valuable and then expect others to admire it. Conduct yourself with gravity rather than noise. Arrogance demands attention. Gravity attracts it without asking. Now comes identity. Everyone carries an inner voice that seeks safety. It urges compromise. Caution. Acceptance of less than desired because less feels secure. That instinct once protected survival. It does not guarantee significance. To elevate your position, you must transition from a scarcity mindset to a selection mindset. Instead of asking whether you can obtain something, begin asking whether it aligns with you. Instead of hoping to be accepted, evaluate whether the environment deserves your participation. This is not superiority. It is alignment. Not every room is built for your shape. Forcing compatibility dilutes presence. Selective placement amplifies it. Selective honesty strengthens this posture. The tendency to soften truth in order to maintain comfort is common, but clarity commands respect. As Niccolo Machiavelli observed, perception and positioning often matter more than politeness. Directness, delivered calmly, cuts through ambiguity. Saying this does not work for me establishes a boundary without theatrics. Truth spoken without hostility becomes a stabilizing force. It signals that approval cannot be purchased with flattery. This role resembles that of a consigliere, the advisor whose influence comes from precision and restraint rather than volume. Rare candor becomes valuable in environments saturated with diplomacy and pretense. Finally, understand the cost. When you raise your standards, reduce availability, protect your reactions, and speak plainly. Some people will withdraw. Some will label you distant. Others will interpret your restraint as pride. Let that filtration occur. Scarcity isolates before it elevates. Independence creates distance before it creates admiration. The crowd moves together because unity feels safe. Strength often stands alone because independence requires resilience. If you choose this path, accept the quiet that follows. Accept misunderstanding as part of differentiation. Value does not emerge from universal approval. It emerges from consistent self-definition. The more clearly you define your standards, the fewer will align, and the stronger those alignments will become. Some people will say you have changed. Some will say you have become distant. Others will call you selfish. Let them speak. What is happening is not loss, it is filtration. When you sift for gold, most of what passes through your hands is sand. If you try to cling to every grain, you end up with nothing of value. The instinct to hold on to everyone, to every invitation, to every opportunity, is driven by fear of emptiness. But an empty hand is not failure. It is capacity. It is space prepared for something heavier, rarer, more aligned. There is a transitional space between who you were and who you are becoming. That space feels quiet. Sometimes it feels isolating. Familiar voices fade. Old dynamics dissolve. But that silence is constructive. In it, you assemble identity deliberately. You build reputation slowly, decision by decision, refusal by refusal. A reputation functions like a fortress. It is not erected overnight. It is laid stone by stone through consistency, boundaries, restraint, and standards that do not bend under pressure. Once established, it precedes you. People hear about you before they encounter you. They understand that access is earned, not automatic. You are not universally liked, but you are consistently respected. The objective is not mass approval. It is selective value, not to be chosen by everyone, but to be pursued by those who recognize alignment, to be considered carefully, to be treated as an investment rather than a convenience. You face a decision. The path of least resistance remains available. You can revert to being endlessly accommodating, perpetually agreeable, constantly accessible. You will be welcomed widely. You will also be replaceable. Or you can close the open door policy. You can recalibrate your standards. You can say no without hostility. You can withdraw attention from what diminishes you. You can insist on quality from others and from yourself. Initially, it may feel solitary, but over time, solidity replaces popularity. When you look at your reflection, you see coherence rather than compromise. You move through environments without seeking permission. You do not distribute yourself in fragments hoping for validation. You allocate yourself intentionally. The world operates through exchange. If you give away everything without discernment, you dilute your own worth. Scarcity creates attention. Standards create respect. Discipline creates identity. Become selective. Become structured. Become deliberate. Value is not declared loudly. It is demonstrated quietly, reinforced consistently, and protected firmly. Be measured. Be grounded. Be rare enough that your presence means something, not because you are withholding from manipulation, but because you understand that energy, time, and identity are finite resources. That is the transformation from seeking approval to defining standards, from chasing inclusion to choosing alignment, from being available to being intentional.